Hello, America. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny this November 2012. This election is all about liberty, nothing more, nothing less, and we're playing for keeps. In response to the call of President Kennedy's immortal words, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. America, this has been produced for you because I love liberty and I love you and I don't want to lose you. My name is Renee. I am a concerned private citizen journalist exercising my right to free speech. The documentary you are about to see chronicles the true life experiences of two brave women, Tina and Marlise, who grew up during World War II. Both Tina and Marlise lived in very different forms of government than we have here in America. Government systems without any liberty, riddled with poverty and fear. I asked to interview them, and they graciously agreed to tell their stories to the American people at this time for the sake of retaining our constitutional liberties. Tina lived under Joseph Stalin's reign in Russia, became a refugee during World War II, spent time in occupied Poland, and ended up in Hitler's Nazi Germany. Marlise and her family became trapped in Hitler's Germany during World War II. Talking to these sages is like traveling into the pages of history in one of the most significant time periods of the 20th century, and a time when tyranny had stolen Europe and was on the move. Tina and Marlise were right in the middle of that time period. These women carry embedded within them the wisdom that can help America at this very critical time in the history of our nation to understand what can happen to a nation when free people lose their liberties. Toward the end of the documentary, you will hear their wisdom and advice regarding the health care bill. Every American needs to tune into this segment. Your life and your family's lives may depend upon it. Tina and Marlise have deep concern that our liberties are vanishing right before our eyes. So do I. If anyone knows what it's like to live under poverty and tyranny, it is them. Before we see their interviews, I want to share with you my unique life experience that helped reinforce for me the special role America has in the world. In 2009, I had the great privilege to attend President Clinton's Global Initiative meeting held in New York City. This is a nonpartisan meeting, and all politics are checked at the door. I had a front row seat in the room with world leaders and heads of state. I also had the high honor to hear two presidents speak, President Clinton and President Obama. As I surveyed the room, I came to understand within the very core of my being that America, young country that we are relative to the rest of the world, must always stand and maintain our liberties that were granted us by our founders and our Constitution. If America does not stand for freedom, the rest of the world doesn't stand a chance at tasting it. America, don't be afraid to hear what you hear. Don't be afraid to see what you see, because there is no fear in truth. Your story is very unique and poignant, and I think it's very important that the American people hear your story, because there are some concerning things you and I have talked about happening in our country today. And Marlise, you are a new author, and you have painstakingly written on the pages of your book, Queen of the Bremen, detail by detail, your personal testimony about your life experience in getting trapped inside Hitler's Nazi Germany. Before we get into that, and I'm sure Marlise you'll agree with me, I've been to Germany. Modern day Germany is a beautiful country filled with wonderful people, very clean, and the German people are very industrious, hardworking people.
That's very true, yes.
And as the world can now see that the social structure of Europe is collapsing the financial system, and Germany is the engine of Europe, holding up the European Union. So they are very industrious and hardworking. So I just wanted to make sure that we understood that the modern day German folks are good, hardworking people.
The German people were a very, very intelligent and industrial country, and the people were doing the best they could after a severe depression. And Hitler came into power and promised them all kinds of things. It was easy for the people to start to believe. He took all the freedom away from the German people. Depression was so severe in Germany that he couldn't survive on the little bit of money that you could take a wheelbarrow full of money.
Sure.
And go and buy yourself just a handkerchief. This is all the money, that's all it was worth.
That was the Weimar Empire, wasn't
Yes.
it? And that was that hyperinflationary period.
Very, very bad
in
during
Germany.
that time. Yes.
There was no free speech, and there there was no religion. My father was a little bit outspoken against the government. My father was arrested.
He was arrested.
Politically, yes.
So
And
your father became a prisoner?
He was more or less a prisoner because he was told he could not leave the city for any reason whatsoever.
Okay.
We were under constant watch. This is what happened when Hitler started taking over.
The secret police came. They usually came at night, and you heard the dogs barking and howling, and you know somebody was being picked up. Got 3 years for speaking out. See, in Germany, you lived on stamps. You know, they rationed the food. There was a food rationing all the time.
First of all, they started giving us ration cards. The ration cards they gave the German people was unbelievable because you had to have a ration card for everything. You couldn't buy a pair of shoes without a ration card. You couldn't get bread or milk or eggs or butter or anything, ration card. And then if you got in line early enough in the morning to get a loaf of bread before the Nazis would come and close the bakery, and then if you belonged to the Nazi party, you could go in the back door and get your bread. But if you didn't belong to the Nazi party, your ration card was no good for that week.
Okay, and then I think you told me, and maybe you can explain for the viewers, what was the difference between a Nazi and a German?
Okay, the Nazis were the people that belonged and believed and trusted in all of that Hitler had to offer. And they were his followers. And then the German men were all drafted. Hitler had control over all the media, all the radio stations, all of the newspapers, magazines and everything.
All government run.
Radios were taken away from you, so you couldn't by chance hear something you weren't supposed to.
So the German people may not have agreed or wanted any part of Hitler, but if they didn't...
Many people did not agree, and they didn't like what was going on, but there was no way to fight Hitler. If you were found with a weapon in your house that you did not turn in, that would mean death to you.
So did they come and collect the guns?
Oh yes, the guns
they just came to your door?
They turned in. Every weapon had to be turned in.
So the Nazis came and knocked on door by door?
Oh yeah, they went around and they made sure, and they knew how many people had registered weapons or whatever. All weapons had to be turned in, and demanded that all the children had to belong to the Hitler Youth.
They demanded it.
They demanded that. There was no choice. They used to have signs all over Germany saying, "Jew, get out of Germany."
Oh.
And that was to warn the Jewish people to just get out. Well, the sad part about it was, how were they going to get out if all the ports were closed?
Right, sure.
We had a good family that lived across from us, the Steins. They had a business, a hardware business, in the city of Rüsselsheim. And they came one day and told my mother that they were leaving. And my mother said, "Well, where are you going?" And they said, "Well, the Nazis have told us they will give us double what our house is worth, double what our business is worth, and we leave everything, all our belongings here, just take the most personal belongings with us. They will give us the money, and they will let us go either to Switzerland or to France, the border, wherever we want to go. They will make sure that we can travel to there safely." And so we've decided to leave. And my mother said, "Well, how come you can leave and we cannot leave? They won't allow us to leave. And they said, well, my mother said, are you sure everything is all right? Yes, they promised us. They've already given us the money, and we really have received a lot more than we expected. And the Steins left. We never heard from again. But when the war ended and we found out there were concentration camps, my mother said, I believe that's where the Steins went. They got on a train. The Nazis took the money back away from them. They were sent to a concentration camps, and for all you know, the Steins were gone. Nobody left Germany. And all those signs, Jew, get out of Germany, there was nowhere to go.
There's not so.
And those people never left Germany. They just put them into a concentration camp. And the German people went along into those camps just the same.
Well, it sounds like if you opposed the Nazis, if you were a
Anything-
German, a Catholic,
yes.
just
Anything
an
you
American, were you able to go to school?
Oh yes, the school, you had to go to school, because there they taught you about Father Stalin.
Father Stalin, is that what they called him?
They called, well, that's what they called them in the village over there.
It was either your neighbor or your father.
Yeah.
They really almost pitted the neighbors against each other, divided the neighbors.
Oh yes, they did.
So there's no sense of community because people were afraid to be picked up.
You were afraid to talk because you never know where it's going to go. If somebody else is going to hear it or whatever, and then you were quiet. Ever they didn't like, they took those people, but they took hundreds that time, and my father and not a person came back. The other ones all died. They didn't need a reason. That was known to everybody that Auschwitz was a concentration camp.
One Christmas, they made the priests come outside, and they took so many priests, they stripped them naked. They made them climb on each other's backs as a pyramid to make it look like a Christmas tree. And then they doused them with hoses, and they froze to death. Another Christmas, they had a huge platform set up in the middle of an arena, and they made all the prisoners come out for Christmas. And they said they had a Christmas gift to give to those who believed in Christ. And they had 6 nuns come out. They stripped the nuns. They made them go into it was a platform, and the outside was covered with wire, chain link fencing that went from the floor all the way to the ceiling. And they stripped the nuns, they made them go inside. Well, they were covering each other, holding on to each other in a circle and trying to, because of the shame that they were enduring.
Sure.
And then they turned on the heat on the platform. And they were burning, and now they left each other trying to climb the fence, and all the chain link fencing turned into hot. And they burned them to death as a Christmas gift for the people that believed in Christ.
There's not too many people what were sent to Siberia came back.
They just died.
They
there.
died there. There was one building I remember, and I had to go by that building every morning when I went to school. And there was a beautiful girl always sitting on the window, and she was always smiling, and I always said hi when I go, good morning when I went by. And one day I went by there, and there was a garden with flowers. So I went over there and I picked a flower, and I gave it to her because she could not get out.
She couldn't get out of her house?
And she could not get out of that building.
Oh, and why was that?
Because she was Jewish.
And how did you know that she was Jewish?
Because they had a big yellow star on the sleeve, that I knew they were. That was the Jewish people. There were some Jews in there.
The Star of David. Okay.
So and I gave her the flowers, and guard, whoever it was standing there, he seen it.
Did he?
You could not. He says, they are Jewish people, and you cannot. And I says, well, they are just people. They're just like me. He says, no, they're not. They are Jewish. So they let me go, but I think they went to my father and told him. And then next day I went by there. She wasn't there no more.
They took her.
That was my experience with the. And about about Auschwitz, we knew that.
Oh my goodness.
But what could we do? We couldn't do nothing.
Nothing. How did Hitler plan on winning this war with...
Because he had in mind that he was going to finish the atomic bomb the English needed to fight the Germans. It was all provided by the Americans, plus your planes, your bombs, all of your ammunition, the fuel, everything that they needed to continue fighting Germany was given by the American, which Hitler did not want. He wanted to finish that bomb first, and he was this close.
So what would you say, Marlise, what's the difference in your mind and what you live with between communism, socialism, Nazism?
You gotta be careful of the isms.
Yeah.
They're all very, very dangerous. They are all destructive. There is no freedom for the people, no peace for the people. Those are dictators. That's dictatorship. And the dictators are the ones that control. Why do we have to have one man and a group of people controlling all the lives of the people around him? Our freedoms are sort of slipping out the window a little bit at a time.
Well, don't you see? I see political correctness as a form of tyranny.
That's right.
If you don't like what I say, I can shut you down. I mean, if we don't want to see something on TV, we turn it off.
Turn it off.
In America, we have the freedom to worship God, or some God, or no God.
And we have been protected all these years by Almighty God because we called on Him for everything. We believed that He was watching over us.
Yes.
But now they took Him out of the courtrooms, they take Him out of the schools. What will happen if they don't have any faith in God? And when you turn your back on God, God's not, He's so gentle, He's so kind. He will never make you look for Him when you don't want Him.
Right.
But if you turn your back on Him, you're going to be like every country without God. That's how it was in Germany. That's how it is in Russia. Still to this day, that's how it was in all the countries. You take China, you take all those countries that have God is just eliminated. And if you eliminate God, He will take His graces away from you, and then you're on your own. And God forbid for anyone who thinks they can make it without Him. I don't believe anyone can.
Right.
And who can tell me that Christmas time I can't say Merry Christmas, that I have to say Happy Holiday?
Right.
Who took this away from me?
That's right. That's right.
I'm in a free country. I was born here. I'm proud to be an American. But nobody has the right to take that away from me. But that's what happens. Little by little by little. It never happens all at once. It seems like people don't realize it, and the American people are not realizing it, but one drop at a time is how it disappears. The freedoms were taken away from the people in other countries.
Right.
They were being persecuted because of their freedoms.
Right.
So they came to America where there is freedom of religion, freedom of speech. We have the right to live as free people. And that made me so proud when I came here to see all the freedoms that we had.
I came to this country, in 1956.
Okay. And why did you come to America?
To be
Immigrants.
free, yes.
You came here to be free.
Yes.
And what was life like when you came to America?
Oh, I like that. I love that.
So now, what about free? Did you feel comfortable being in America, that you could speak freely?
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Oh, it was beautiful.
You
You didn't have to look over your shoulder anymore. You didn't have to be afraid to speak out.
And I've always been so proud of this country. And the American flag is the most beautiful flag that can fly anywhere in the world.
If the government is controlling our health care, and they then have the power to choose our health care that we get, so, and again, you experienced these isms, Nazism, socialism, and under those, communism, invariably there's always poverty, correct?
Oh, there's only the rich and the poor.
Yeah. So, and the rich are the Nazi party
Oh,
or
yes.
the ruling party.
The ruling party.
And there's no middle class.
No, and the
And-
poor are the ones that are working for them and doing whatever they want
And
to
they're
do.
given what the government allows
Yes,
them.
what allows them.
So then if our government, I mean, if we go down this train, and it's chilling, but I think it's important that we do, because I think there are people in America, and I would say, what would you say to people who would say, oh, that can't possibly happen here? This national health care bill that has caused a great stir among the American people. Any polls I have seen, the majority of the people did not want that bill. It was forced down the American people's throats.
See, that's where the problem is. Force.
Force.
That's where the problem is. You cannot force the American people to do something they don't have a right to vote on.
You know, one of the biggest issue that Americans are facing, and many Americans, according to the polls, are very, very concerned about our healthcare system. And its history bears out that governments don't run things very well. And what are your concerns that could happen under a government-run healthcare system?
Like you said, that government doesn't, when they take something over, it never turns out good.
Right. So here we have, now you've lived in government-run countries
Yes.
with dictatorship. And there was rationing. There was never enough to go around in that type of government system. Is that right? Never enough food, never enough poverty. You felt that you had poverty in that system?
Yes.
You were
yes.
impoverished. So there was always wondering, do I have enough food to eat? So if the government's running our healthcare system, couldn't it evolve to the place that they could decide who gets what of the healthcare available? Like, let's say, do you think it's possible that if there were 15 people who needed open heart surgery to live, and there were only 10 spots available, 10 doctors or 10 beds, only 10 people get it? So what would happen to the other 5?
They would die.
See, one of the things I look at as I evaluate this, I said, well, if they can control our health care, then they have access to our private medical records. So they then, in effect, have violated our patient-doctor relationship. That's very intimate, very personal. And they can decide, well, you're a certain age, baby boomers are retiring right now at record numbers, paid into the system. Or they could even access your voting records and say, well, if you don't vote the way we want you to, behind the scenes, of course, it wouldn't be out in public. They could say, well, you don't get the insulin you need to live, or you don't get the heart surgery, you don't get the hip, or you don't get the medical care, maybe based upon how you vote or your age. They could really choose that for us. I mean, is that possible, do you think?
Yes, I agree with you.
Wow. I was hoping that your answer would be no. And that was my concern as I looked deeper at this. One of the things is in a representative government, like in America, we have representatives that represent the people's view. And when I watched how that health care bill was forced into law, even against people, congressmen and women who did not want to vote for it, it was voted through and nobody read the bill. So I asked who wrote the bill and why didn't they read the bill? And why did we have to have it like that, so quick? What are your thoughts?
Why did they, through the night, why did they just sign the bill? That is terrible.
In the night.
In the night, yes.
And therein lies, if they are going to force a bill on the people who don't want it, that violates our very Constitution of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're willing to force it on us when we don't want it, then isn't that like some of the force that you lived under?
Yes.
And
Exactly.
And as I understand it, the government is going to use the IRS as the enforcing agents, and they are going to hunt down Americans who don't buy the health insurance and fine them and tax them. And if it's, say, a young person who's 27 years old that's healthy and maybe they don't have a job yet because it's having a hard time getting a job in today's economy, even though they tell us things are good. I know a lot of people that can't find work. So that person has to find a way to buy health care that they don't want or need, or they're fined for it, which is going to cost some money.
Yes. And where do they take the money from? Well, where are they going to take the money from when they don't have a job?
Exactly. And what happens then?
And they go to jail?
Oh my gosh.
Then it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So Marlise, your story is so compelling. As we go into this election in November 2012, 6 weeks out from today, would you look into the camera and what advice would you give to the American people based upon your experience living in a godless, poverty-stricken, fearful, killing society? What would you say?
Well, I would tell the American people that they should look at what we have had since the beginning of this time that this country was founded. And we have to stand up for those freedoms and those rights. And we can let no one take them from us. With the background of the America, of the country that we came back to, I am so proud of this country. I'm very.
You mentioned it before when we talked about the founders. The founders had set up
Yes.
our government, and they all did not get along.
No.
And I agree with you what you said about Democrats and Republicans. I came from a family of Kennedy Democrats, and I came of age under Ronald Reagan. And those were the days when Democrats and Republicans, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill would spar in public, but they would sit down at the end of the
And work
day
things out.
and work things out for the benefit of the
Yes.
American people. President Clinton and Trent Lott and Newt Gingrich, they worked together on behalf of the American people, and it seemed we lost that in the 2000s.
Yes, it's gone.
Somewhere along the line,
gone.
because both sides can have good views that can help, but if both sides have self-interest at heart and not the American people, then the American people lose and the government wins.
That's right.
And I think that's what we as American people, that's why the labels, it makes no, like I agree with, it doesn't matter. That's why I'm a registered independent. I could vote for a Democrat. If I see a John Kennedy Democrat,
Oh, yeah.
he's my guy. Do you think the American people see this, Tina? Do you think that they understand how important and critical this upcoming election is for the country?
I say the American people don't know
Why do you think
what
that is?
could happen to them when it would become the same time when I was growing up. They don't know. They don't know what hell that is, going through what we went through.
No. The economy must be in pretty bad shape for them to have to step in so dramatically and print money. And in reality, when you print money, you devalue your currency, right?
Yes.
So everything gets more expensive: food, clothing, gas. So that only hurts the middle class and the people who are poor because all the staples of life are going up. So
Yes.
why isn't our government doing something that will help our economy to really create jobs versus telling us things are really not that bad, it's going to get better? What advice would you give based upon your life experience in living under two dictators, Stalin and Hitler?
They should watch out not to lose freedom, free speech. And should not let the government control them. Because the people own the United States, not the government. They are working for the people. That's what I think.
It's what our founders set it up for.
The way I see it now, that's the other way around.
Here's my concern. The more I've talked to you and Tina, is I hear the same resonating sound, neighbor spying upon neighbor, that this form of government goes into neighborhoods. And it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is anymore in America. That's why I'm an independent. I have friends who are Democrats, Republicans,
right.
liberals, libertarians, independents, or not registered anywhere. And personally, I don't care what anybody's registered
I
because
don't
it's
care
all
either.
about liberty anyway. But this division between our neighbors and community is very disturbing to me.
Yes.
And again, they did it through fear in these totalitarian regimes, because let's spy on each other. When the real enemy is not your neighbor,
No.
it's the government.
Right.
And if they keep us, because what's disturbing me deeply is the division in this country, which I believe, now talking to you and Tina, is deliberate. Divide the people,
Yes.
let them fight amongst themselves, and all the while liberty is leaving us.
Well, that's
Drop
what they say.
by drop by drop, like
A
you
country
said.
divided against itself will fall.
And who comes into power then?
And then the dictators come into power.
Because if people have to accept chaos, they would willing to accept tyranny over chaos because they perceive it as
Right.
order.
Right.
And that is something I see with this healthcare bill. And I brought a quote from Ronald Reagan. Actually, there's a couple quotes here, and one by Margaret Thatcher. But regarding healthcare, and I'm going to paraphrase what Reagan said. He said, one of the traditional methods of imposing socialism on a people has been by way of medicine. It's very easy to disguise a medical program as a humanitarian project.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are a little reluctant to oppose anything that suggests medical care for people who possibly can't afford it. So Margaret Thatcher says, this is very famous, the problem in socialism is that you run out of people's money. So if you run out of people's money, and you run out of food like you experienced, and basic supplies, would you not run out of medicine, and doctors, and operations? And then it goes back to who chooses who gets the insulin to live,
Right. And who gets eliminated?
who gets eliminated. And then I say, if they can access our medical records, could they not access our voting records and say, that person did not vote for us, so behind the scenes, we'll just put them to the back of the line. They won't really know why. We'll just say, sorry, you know, the insulin's gone for the month, right? Your food's gone for the month. Your ration card is gone for
Exactly
the
what will happen.
Is that what you see it?
Exactly what will happen.
See, this was a deep-seated concern I had, and that's why I wanted to talk to folks like you. As I look at what happened under Nazi Germany and Stalin's Russia, and I look at America today, I get very concerned. So I guess my first question.
America, as we go into the election, don't let anyone tell you your vote doesn't count. Lives have been lost and blood has been shed, so you have the right to vote. America, this election is all about liberty. Make no mistake about it, we're playing for keeps. This is a time of greatness for our country. If America fails, then liberty is lost, and then the world fails. America, failure is not an option. May God bless the USA.